Hey, this is Beach Sandals. Yeah, Mario.
Okay, so on Friday, Brian and I went to the food trucks by Y2E2, and we mostly talked to customers because I don't know, the vendors were really busy, and when we tried to go back after work, they were gone. But two of the interesting people we talked to one was a mother who talked about how it's kind of difficult for her to bring her kids to food trucks, so she doesn't really go to them often because there's no lines, there's no clear place to sit. It's just kind of a very free flowing experience, and it's really hard for I think she had 2 and 3 year olds, so she doesn't really go that often, and she was just, it's more like a solo experience if she ever has the time. And then another person, it was kind of interesting because he has this very hip view of food trucks. He thinks all the cool people go there, and it's mostly he goes there to get quick bites if he sees a food truck, and he uses it as a way to experiment and try smaller portions of foods he's never had before. And
Sunday we visited some food truck parks in SF. Went to Summer Street first. There we met some couples, talked to a vendor, got some basic answers, nothing too in depth. Later on we visited, what was that park?
Parks.
Sparks,
something like that.
Visited Sparks. That was a little bit more lively. There was more people, more trucks. There we also chatted with some vendors, some brief, had an interview with a vendor, a guy who is going to be the GM pretty soon. So we have a little connection there. We might even be able to prototype later on. We spoke with a vendor who was a mother of 3, and she was able to bring her kids to work and let them play at the park while she worked. And we also met some consumers who were actually going to party at one of the food truck parks, and they were able to give us some good insight on why they like to go to food trucks, why they like to throw parties there. But overall, no one really had any issues.
Yeah, and then on Sunday we also utilized some personal connections and did some cold calling to see if we can get some over the phone interviews. So we have 3 interviews set up for the rest of today, and then also we talked to Gary, who founded Me So Hungry, which is a SF and LA based food truck. And he talked about the different schedule constraints, but also freedoms he gets from working there. And then we also talked to Tatiana from Moon something. I can't remember the name of the truck, but they're attached to a restaurant, and it was a totally different experience because they don't have to deal with a lot of the logistical problems of not having a physical location. Yeah, if you guys want to go over some of the key takeaways, one each.
I think, well, we were talking about this a bit, but approaching as a student gives different answers than if you just kind of talk to people casually and then work.
Yeah, that's one point. One thing that a lot of people mentioned were the prices. Some people, talked about how they dread the prices. Other people were I accept it, this is San Francisco, this is where we are. It's expensive, so be it.
Yeah, one thing that I found interesting and that I heard a lot when we were in San Francisco is that people tend to go to food trucks parks when there's some sort of festival or event happening, and there's something that attracts them to make the trip to the food truck park. Yeah, it's just interesting that I heard over and over again, so reasons to go.
Yeah, for me, I think it was there's such a disconnect between the people or the consumers and people working at food trucks. On the inside, you don't realize how loud or hot it is, and then also the prices seem really high. But when you consider that food trucks have to buy parking permits and food permits for every place that they drive through, that's where it gets kind of crazy. So, yeah.
Yeah, people usually prefer when it's there's a piece of land that they can rent a spot and be permanent there, as opposed to driving around the country to find a permanent spot, which is objectively much more difficult.
Awesome. See you guys in class.